switch, he's on the screen there.
Oh, it's a Shane.
Him and Shane, it's
Oh, it's a Shane. Hi, Slade.
Can we get more than one person on the screen?
It should auto switch when they talk, but I'll
Okay.
I'll see what
Yes, it's good fine tonight.
Thank you.
There you go.
Okay, you need one?
Yep.
Okay, and they're all on at the same time.
All right, we'll call the meeting to order. Take roll call. Slade, Almond. Cody Franson.
Yep.
Corey Gall.
Yep.
Mark Miller.
Yes.
Kyle Weir, present. Additions to the agenda? Nothing? Okay, we need a motion to approve the agenda.
So move.
Motion by Corey. I'll second it. Seconded by Kyle. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, two new business to discuss face coverings.
So, I guess I'll start with a little background. Obviously, everybody's aware of the meeting they had in Menlo on Monday where the board basically made a decision to decide how they were gonna dictate all that stuff within their building. Since that time, over the course of the week, I've had a couple different phone calls from some different parents, kind of questioning, why we're doing this, so on and so forth. I gave Kyle a call yesterday after one of those conversations and said, it looks like the direction that this is going, it would probably be in the best interest of us to have a meeting and have the board make some statement one way or the other on kind of where you guys stand with this. As some of the questions that I've been getting is, we have this plan that we talked about at the August 10th meeting, but the board never specifically came out and said, yes, we're okay with masks, or we're not okay with masks, so on and so forth. So, in light of that, I guess I thought, in talking to Kyle, we kind of agreed, or at least I think we agreed, said that it would probably be in our best interest to get together and talk about that. Whether we want to continue, doing things the way that we have been doing, or if the board wants to take a different stance and say, we're just not going to do that anymore. So that's kind of where we are as far as the background goes. I left it pretty open-ended on the agenda as far as there's something on there for you to act, if you choose to act, one way or the other, but I didn't put a specific motion because that was kind of going to depend on where our conversations took us here. So that's kind of what I have as far as the background is concerned on that. I know I've had quite a bit of correspondence both ways from people, staff members, parents, over the course of the last 24 hours regarding their stance and some different things on that. So I don't know where you want to go from there with the conversation or the discussion and what we're thinking there.
Okay, so how do I list this? So we got on the 21st or whatever, 22nd, I think we got the email that said we were going to face masks in the hallway. And just out of curiosity, what was the reasoning for that? Like why?
Right,
So I guess how do I want to say this? So we did green, yellow, red, which whatever, and we somewhat approved it or whatever, however you want to look at it. But so why did we all of a sudden implement that without numbers skyrocketing?
Right, and that's a fair question. We were actually talking today, as we got into looking at that plan a little bit, the plan kind of actually contradicted itself a little bit, and I didn't really think about that until we started having a conversation in the sense that, and I went back and watched our meeting from the 10th, just because I wanted, like, the last 40 minutes, we were kind of having this conversation about the mask stuff again. Because I know, and I'll be honest, I came out in that meeting and said, you know, we're gonna start in green. Our plan would be, we're not really gonna, we're gonna encourage the masks, we're not gonna actually require them, so on and so forth. But we talked about throughout the course of the meeting that things are gonna obviously evolve and we might have to make changes as we went. But what I didn't think about was, originally we had said we're recommending masks, but we're not gonna require them. However, we put that clause into the plan that said, staff members reserve the right to require masks, you know, regardless of the situation. So when you stop and think about that for a second, you know, you're basically saying we're recommending, but at the same time, staff can require. So the plan kind of contradicts itself to begin with. But to get to what you're saying, last Saturday I sent out that message to parents of students in grades 6 through 12. And basically, we got together on Friday afternoon along with Mr. Faulkner, and we kind of sat down in this end of the building and said, what's working, what's not working. And one of the things that made me really nervous was when we took a look at all the traffic we had in the hallways and some different things there, in combination with some kids and some parents contacting me just about how uncomfortable their kid felt in those situations. We sat down and we said, you know, our best bet there probably is going to be to have kids wear masks while they're in the hallways, just because of the amount of traffic, you know, the proximity they have to one another and all that stuff. So that's ultimately why we decided to go there. We tried to look at some of the situations where we had large numbers of students and it wasn't actually practical or possible to distance them from one another. So ultimately, that's how we kind of decided we were going to, you know, adapt that plan a little bit in that particular sense. So.
And so listening to it, and like whatever, everybody knows where I stand, but I try, like, for the last 36 hours, this has been a nightmare and this is all I've thought about. And like the whole thing for, like, I think in listening to the people that are more against it, and don't necessarily think their kids should have to do it. And like you said, a few kids felt uncomfortable. Well, right, I understand that. But so just because somebody feels uncomfortable, I don't know that we need to jump and totally not do what other people, you know what I mean? You know, and so like.
Well, I will say that, you know, I'm pointing out that I had some people contact me about that. That's not ultimately why we decided to do it. You know, because we understand that when we're looking at this from a whole, there's people that are going to be on both sides of the fence one way or the other. What we're looking at is more of a, and we've had this conversation already, is the recommendations we're getting from the different health organizations and stuff say, you know, that it makes sense to use them when it's not practical to keep people distance. Now, I know there's people that disagree with that. I guess my stance is, I don't know more than the medical people do. If we have an opportunity to do that, or an opportunity where we feel like that is necessary, I guess my thought is we're gonna do it if we can. I actually had a conversation with the Department of Health this afternoon on an unrelated note. And it was kind of nice to talk to them because I think sometimes we lose track of what it is that we're actually trying to do. And he just said, you know, remember, our goal here is we're trying to minimize and eliminate as many unnecessary contacts as we possibly can. You know, understanding that there's no way that you're going to be able to fully eliminate everything. But if you can find ways to eliminate the possibility of this transferring into specific areas of your building, he said, it's going to make your job a whole lot easier when we have to come in as a Department of Health and help you investigate a specific case that comes up and figure out, you know, how many people this person's in contact with, different things, so on and so forth. And so, you know, that just kind of reinforced what we were thinking about in the first place. So, you know, when I called you, I guess my big thing here is, obviously, I think that we need to try to do some of this stuff when it looks like we can't keep kids distant from one another. However, you know, when you start doing one thing here, you know, like say we're talking about the hallways in the building. So we start doing that and saying, well, we think it's important for kids to have masks on while they're doing that during the couple minutes they're in the hallway. Well, then you start thinking about every other situation where kids are not able to be spaced away from one another. So, for example, we looked at those, we get to the volleyball game the other night, and I'm sitting there thinking, well, if we're gonna have kids wear masks in the hallways and do that stuff, do we need to have the kids that show up in the student body do the same thing because they're, all over each other, on top of each other, that whole thing. So where does it, where does it stop? Where do we start? I mean, that's the tough part for me, because it's pretty simple when it's in the classroom. A teacher keeps them spaced apart. They have to work one-on-one. They can't keep the space. They're asked to wear masks. Same thing with the hallway. But once we open up that can and we start talking about it, ultimately everything else kind of needs to fall in line with what you're doing. If you're doing this for a specific reason, and you have a similar scenario come up, it's really hard not to do the same thing there. And I think that's what we're seeing as we've gotten kids back into the building, and we're starting to see what this actually looks like compared to what we thought it would look like. We're starting to see that there's some areas where we're gonna have to do something a little bit different here if we wanna try to minimize, like the Department of Health is telling us we should do. So, that's kind of where we stand on it, and, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to it.
Just in the hallways, I'm not this side, 135 kids in the hallway at the same time. Putting a mask on for 4 minutes isn't the worst thing. Most times, it's only like 2 minutes because kids go to the locker room and go to class right away. So it's 2 minutes, 6 times a day, 12 minutes total, they're wearing a mask to help eliminate the spread of some of this. That's kind of our thought process with that.
Here's my thoughts. I don't think it was too big of a deal for the masks in the hallway, that kind of thing. I think where things fell down was that we had this plan going forward, and with a green, yellow, and red. And I think at the yellow level, then masks were mandatory, and it was not, a discussion. And I think everybody came into the building knowing that, but then I think the thing which was hard here the last 36 hours, good people that like each other are on opposite ends. Really, I've never seen an issue that people are so divided, not in the middle. And I think what happened is that people are a little sensitive to this issue of masks to begin with. And what happened is what the policy was got stepped out of, and we never talked about that. And no longer were you under the protection of what the board was saying, and we're the representatives of the community. So I think a lot of people felt, yay on my half, and what are they doing on my half? Because there was no support from the board, there was nothing talked about. All of a sudden, this just got mandated. And I think, we had talked a little bit about this, anything that seems forced, I think there's a general reaction where people fight against it. And I think where people feel asked, I think most people oblige with it. And so I think that's what we fell into, whether you guys plan to or not, but that's where we are. And right now, people are super polarized on both sides. And that's where I see that we fell down. And I understand both sides, and it's right now it looks kind of simple and silly that just 4 minutes in the hallway. But I think the bigger picture, if you had to back up, is that I think the administration stepped outside of the board and our decision. And I think that's probably where the biggest conflict happened, from my point of view.
I would agree with that. Well, and I'll piggyback on that a little bit, and I think maybe this is shame on me, maybe this is shame on the rest of the board, and maybe this is a little bit of shame on the administration, but ultimately the only thing the administration actually really gave to the whole plan, and we call it a plan, I think it's very much just a policy. Like, the board was not really involved, other than, I think, way back in June maybe even, the board was like, well, 5 days a week, that's important to the board. And I think, I think, so now that, like, now, how I feel is now we're trying to come up with something, because people don't like it, and it's not something that we necessarily did, and I know that's part of the job of signing up to run for the school board, but like now, a lot of the heat is directed at the board over, well, the policy, and I just think that maybe that's a little bit of everybody's fault that we weren't maybe more involved in making it, and we would have, ultimately, maybe it would have been the same, but like, we would have had an agreement on, yes, that's 100%, because to be honest, do I 100% agree with it, and do I ever need to? No, but I don't know how far I actually agreed with it. Does that make sense? You know, like, whatever, the green section, like, yeah, I agree with that, and then going to the yellow section, I agree with that. And I know there's gray area in the whole thing on like, when do we go from green, and when do we go from yellow, and like, I think that's where like, not that masks in the hallway is necessarily a huge deal to everybody, but that it's, well, why are we going to yellow if nothing has, and I understand your points on, yeah, and so like, I get that, but like, I think people that are, like Mark said, that are on the other half are like, whoa, why are we all of a sudden in yellow? And I think maybe that's all of us kind of having dropped the ball and not been more unified. Not that we had to be 100% on agreement, because I don't think that could have happened. But I think, you know, and now we're just trying to clean up a mess, and it's a tough spot for everybody. You know, I don't know if that makes sense.
You know, I had a long conversation on the phone yesterday with Wade Fogarty, who's the executive director of Associated School Boards. And I talked to him after I talked to you on the phone. And part of the conversation we had, I just asked Wade, I said, so Wade, here's my question, and I said, this comes up a lot, not necessarily with this specific topic, because I kind of explained to him where we're at. I said, can you give me a good example or some resources as far as explaining the difference between what is policy and what is, you know, administrative regulation? And basically, they want to keep everything really vague. Basically, they said, we encourage people to try to stay in their own lanes. You know, the board stays in their lane, the administration stays in their lane. I said, that's fantastic, but what does that actually mean? And so I said, you know, my understanding is that the policy is the broad stuff that, you know, we're supposed to act within, or Shane's supposed to act within. And I said, that's great, but try explaining that to somebody, you know, outside of the boardroom or whatever, you know, we have going on. And I told them, I said, my understanding was when we put this, you know, we've had these committees to put this plan together, is we weren't actually making policy. We were setting forth the rules and the regulations that were gonna, you know, govern the day-to-day stuff. And basically what he said is, you're not wrong, but he said, when you get to a situation where you have a topic such as this, you know, the mask thing, he goes, really, there's not much different in enforcing the mask thing as there is, you know, a simple dress code or something like that. He goes, it basically falls into the same purview. However, when you have something that has the potential to divide everybody as much as it did, he goes, for your own interest or your own well-being or your own sanity, he said, maybe you're better off just tossing it up to the board and having them be the one that makes the ultimate decision on that, even though that probably crosses over into your duties and responsibilities because of all the heat that you are going to take personally for that particular decision. And we talked for a while after that, and, you know, I said, I get it. You know, it's just hard because when we talked about this to begin with, and we discussed the plan at the 10th meeting, we said, you know, part of the reason we're approaching it this way is to leave it open-ended, because we know we're gonna have to make adjustments as we get into this, whether it's 2 days, 3 days, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, so on and so forth. And, you know, we're seeing it happen, we're doing all that, and we're trying to figure out how we can get through the school day without having something blow up. Now, you know, going back, you know, I thought the committee thing was a good idea. You know, I thought we got some good input. We got input from parents and, you know, staff members and so on and so forth. You know, in hindsight, could we have, you know, potentially tried to include the board maybe more actively? I know, like I said, I tried to send you guys as much updates and stuff like that. You know, I don't know if that was difficult for you to try to be able to provide feedback to me because you weren't actually there, or whatever the case happens to be. You know, from the beginning, we said we're not trying to step on anybody's toes. We're just trying to go about doing what we think is the best way to handle things during the day. Obviously, when we put all this together, we were certainly aware of the fact that people weren't going to be happy regardless of, I shouldn't say people in general, categorize them all together. And some people probably weren't going to be happy with whatever we came up with, because people just have their own beliefs about what they want to do. And you know, you kind of touched on it a little bit earlier. We can't just, every time somebody calls and is unhappy with what we're doing, just automatically say, okay, we're gonna change everything, because then we just get ourselves into a big mess. So I'm with you on that. I think we all probably shoulder some of the blame for not necessarily, you know, like you said, probably working together as we should to try to make, or at least collectively having the opportunity to voice our opinions about what we thought one way or the other. So, you know, regardless of that, you know, here we are. So, you know, that's, I like to talk a lot. So, but, you know, like I said, so we're here now, and I guess what we do moving forward is try to learn from that, so we don't, you know, obviously, just like any time else, and you make a mistake or something else along the way. And in hindsight, to be honest with you, we talked about this today too, it maybe would have just been easier to say, had we known a little bit more about what was gonna happen, we're gonna do masks here, here, here to start with, and then we don't have to worry about people when you transition from something that's lighter to something that's a little more restrictive. So, you know, now that I look at it, it's like Marion just started the other day, they're basically doing what we're trying to do right now, but they did it from the very beginning. And I think they're probably gonna be a little more successful with it, just because there wasn't that glimmer of hope from some people about, oh, okay, I'm not gonna have to wear one, and this is gonna, you know.
I agree, and as long as you bring up Marion, like, and again, not that it's wrong or not that they did it better or whatever, but like, I know when they had their meeting, we did ours online, and I've even gone back, like tonight's meeting, I've really gone back and forth, like, I almost feel like people should be here, and if we have to use the gym, then we should, you know, like, I just feel like it's so, we isolate ourselves, and I know people are able to watch on there, but it's really hard to get your input, you know, like, a thought.
They can't voice their input at the meeting to tell us how they feel, because, yeah, they're sitting there behind the computer right now, and how are they supposed to communicate to us during a meeting, and how can we ask the questions to them?
Right.
What do you people feel?
But I know, like, anyway, back to my point was, like, when Marion did their plan or whatever, like, they met out at the football field, and it was the school board and the administration, and they invited, and so, like, it's easy to look back and say, now, yeah, that's what we should have done, that would have made more sense. But I think that probably makes some of that stuff easier if, like, when we had our meeting, I crawled on, and I'm as guilty as everybody else. I was on for 5 or 10 minutes, and there was 22 people on, total, you know, and so, like, well, that's not a good representation of the whole district. And not that if we would have held it at school, the field, we would have had everybody show up, that's not what, but I feel like it's more inviting I think we need to try and do a better job of getting back to getting more community input on stuff like this to make it go smoother, like, and I know we can't have a meeting every month, and so, like, Kyle trying to live in an ideal world, but you know, like, things moving forward that I think we need to start doing that, because like when I ran, I remember one of the things was, and I think it might have been even one of Jeremy's questions, is like, how do you keep how has the school board become disconnected from the public? And I felt like we actually had gotten really good and COVID hit, and like, I think we're further apart than we ever have been, and I know, like, I've even had a few people call and say, I really hate to bother you, but like, I always try and say, call, I don't care,
Right, yeah.
you know? But so like, I think we need to, instead of us 5 and you 3, or, you know, I think it'd be nice if we were allowed, maybe get some more input from the community face to face, if
I
possible.
think one of the things you gotta be a little bit careful of though too is, you know, there's a difference between having a public meeting where, you know, there's not gonna be any board action, you allow people to interact with that stuff. You know, at regular meeting, and there's no, when you have a special meeting, the tough thing about special meeting is there's actually no expectation of public input. It's just, that was one of the things we talked about last year when we did the board training. But even at a regular meeting, you know, like I said, there's a specific spot on the agenda for people to provide input on what they want to do. And, you know, like I said I think last time we had a meeting, you know, all you gotta do is contact me and let me know what you're talking about. The thing we gotta be careful of is, when you have a regular meeting, even if it's a regular monthly meeting, you know, you're conducting your business out in the open. It's not supposed to be an open dialogue throughout the meeting with people that are sitting there. You know, they get to come and they get to address what they want to do, but it's not, you know, the purpose of it is not so we're sitting here throughout the course of the meeting and, you know, say for example, Jeremy's, you know, someone from the public sitting here, that we're having a constant dialogue on every issue with him as we go through that. As far as the input stuff goes, like, it's good that, and I'm sure even within the last 24, 36 hours, or whatever, I'm sure you've gotten a lot of calls and emails and stuff like that, which is fantastic, because that's the kind of thing that is supposed to help influence your decision on what you want to do. You know, I've had emails and calls and different things too, but from people on both sides of it, you know, trying to get me to, you know, influence what I'm going to tell you, and so on and so forth. I think you got to be a little bit careful about, you know, how that particular thing functions at a board meeting. I'm with you though. I mean, I would be happy to see, you know, more people, you know, call ahead of time and say, hey, you know what, I see this is on the agenda. I have some things I'd like to share with the board about that, you know, during the meeting or whatever it happens to be.
And I agree, I know we can't have them interact the whole time, but on something like this that's so polarizing, I wouldn't have a problem saying there's 15 minutes. Like, if we have people that want to talk for that whole time, like, I don't need to hear myself talk, I'm not.
But no, and I mean, I think that's the purpose of, you know, the way it's supposed to work is, you know, you come in, you know, you have a hot button topic or something like that. Tell us what you think about it, you know?
One of the things, I looked up a Brookings School Board meeting, and I was really surprised. They had everybody socially distanced, but there was probably 20, 25 people in the room beside the school board. And they had a time where people could come forward, they signed their name at the podium so they could document who is talking, and then they could talk for, I don't know how many minutes, but then when they were done, then the next person. And I couldn't believe how much this big school let people just open up, and it pretty much all they had to do is put their name down. And so I don't know what the answer is, but I think it's a little hard to call you and to come forward, because some people feel awkward about that. But I know when we had the Associated School Board here, they had mentioned what they did is they just had a yellow slip where you just filled out your name and what you want to talk about. They gathered them before the meeting started, gave to the president, then the president could call them and have them addressed. So I don't know. I like the idea of having something maybe a little more open. Maybe that's way off topic, but I do like that idea.
Well, and if you want to do something like that, that's a matter of policy change on your part.
Gotcha.
But that's not for tonight.
All right.
I, just a thought, and just, yeah, I don't know how many people, I mean, it wasn't a ton, but it was a fair amount of people that called that, you know, I don't know if they would have showed up to talk. Anyway, so, I don't know, I don't.
So as far as the topic at hand is concerned, essentially, I think there's probably two ways to go on this. Well, either way you decide to go, I think you probably need to make some type of statement one way or the other as far as what your stance is on this. And, you know, that could be, you know, you pass some type of resolution saying we, you know, support the plan in place, or we support the administration to act on the issue of masks, you know, as it relates to COVID, or you just say, we want the, you know, kind of go mental on the whole deal and say we want masks removed from the plan completely, and we'll address it later. Now, obviously, I'm sure most of you have had several instances of dialogue or conversations with people on where they stand one way or the other on that. I will tell you, I have a lot of concern on the part of our staff members if we were to take that ability away from them to say in a certain situation that I can't say that a kid has to wear a mask. And ultimately, if you go that route, I don't know what this is gonna look like. Because it leaves a lot of questions out there on the table as far as what do we do moving forward, how do teachers adjust their regular classroom routines and even their approach to teaching, because they're gonna have to eliminate some of that one-on-one stuff if they're not comfortable doing it. So that's my big concern on that. You know, and I guess the other side of it would just be when people have talked to me about, I don't think kids should have to wear masks, so on and so forth, is getting a legitimate rationale from them as to why they don't want their kids wearing masks. You know, like, we're sitting here thinking, we're doing this from the science perspective and the science side of things because people are making that recommendation, saying this is gonna help mitigate the spread of COVID. You know, when we have people that say, well, my kid's not gonna wear a mask, and I don't want my kid to wear a mask. I don't get a real good explanation from those people as to why they don't want their kid to wear a mask, other than, well, it's uncomfortable, or something to that effect. Which, I guess when I look at that compared to the research that has been done on why they should be used, I have a tough time, you know, weighing one against the other.
I think the biggest gripe that I received against it was we didn't have a set policy in place to do what happened, you know, with the mandate of it in the hall. I think that was the biggest thing I heard from the people who were not happy with it, with having the kids wear the masks in the hallways. Basically, he said, well, you know, basically you guys gave the administration the line, let them toe the line on their own, and not didn't give them as much leadership as far as a vote of this is what we are going to do and this is what we aren't. And I think that was the biggest thing I heard. You know, there's some that complained, you know, my kids shouldn't have to wear one. Look what they did over in Menno. They just basically said that we're not going to mandate it, and they voted for it not to happen. Okay, well, why didn't you guys vote on it? Well, in my explanation, most of them was this was going to be kind of a trial and error at the beginning of the school year to see how this was all going to work, as far as the kids coming out of class and seeing how many were going to congregate, or how much distance was going to be able to be had by these kids. And as we all know, that once the floodgates open up from the classrooms for these kids to come out, I mean, they're going to be elbow to elbow. I mean, plain and simple. Yeah, did we drop the ball on this a little bit? Yeah, probably, because, you know, we did not vote as a school board to say, this is what we're going to do. And after this, you know, the administration has the discretion to go from point A to point B, and that there should be some, that the administration should contact us and say, what do you think we should do now? We've had this happen. I think we're gonna need to go from here to there. I think that was the biggest gripe I had from a few people in contacting me, was that, you know, we didn't make a formal vote on how we were gonna handle such a thing. You know, like I said, there's some of them that said, well, my kids shouldn't have to wear one, and, look at the science, kids, generally don't get it, and if they do, they don't come down with any type of bad symptoms, blah, 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 but, yeah, but there are others we have others in the building we have to look out for too, other than just the kids. The kids can be asymptomatic, but they can also have that and give it to the teacher, and then the teacher goes home and then she gives it to her family who may have some medical conditions that it would impact greatly. So we're not just trying to, protect the kids. We're not telling just the kids have to do it just because we're worried about the kids. We have to worry about everybody within the facility of Freeman School District. And that's basically what I told them. And I've had people on both sides of this contact me. I've had, I suppose, the last 24 hours I had right around 25 between emails and phone calls that I fielded. People on both sides. So basically saying, well, we don't like this or we accept this. So I guess, tonight we have to come to a conclusion of how we're gonna handle this and make a vote on how this is gonna move forward.
I guess the biggest thing that I got is, what's next? This was we had a plan and then this got sprung out. What's the next thing that's going to just all of a sudden up and change without us as a board having a say and being able to talk about it?
Like I said, I mean, basically, we had kind of a plan in place, but we didn't necessarily have the school board say, this is what we're gonna do no matter what. And I think that's what some of the people said, well, you guys didn't vote on if it's gonna be mandatory or not, and you just, let the administration do what they wanted. Well, you have to adapt to certain situations, and I understand that, like I said, when the floodgates open, the kids come out of class, you're gonna have kids this far apart, and this far apart. And it's gonna be very hard to control, what is gonna happen, and like you said, it takes a few days to maybe a week to really analyze what is all gonna happen in these hallways, and the timing of trying to get kids to move through without getting, elbow to elbow and breathing all over each other. But like I said, the biggest thing we have to worry about is, we have to worry about the kids, yes, but we also have to worry about our staff and administration as far as, there's something that they could take home to a baby or an elderly person that could affect their futures too. So that's something we have to worry about also. It's not just the kids.
I spoke with our attorney a lot as we were kind of going through the process of trying to put this together. And I talked with Larry up in Canastota a lot for various reasons, but just kind of asked how they were going about their process. And both of them kind of said, part of it contributed to the reason we went about this particular approach to this was kind of what Corey touched on a little bit, understanding that if we have to call a special board meeting every single time that something changes, we're gonna have 2-hour meetings 4 to 5 days a week. And that's why we didn't make the big push for this to be policy, for various reasons. One being, policy isn't usually that specific. Again, it's usually the broad stuff, and then we operate underneath it. And you certainly have the discretion as a board to make policy whenever you want, regardless of what we decide we're doing here today. If you want to make a policy that says Mr. Coons isn't allowed to wear red pants during the school day, you can make a policy that says that. So I mean, that's fine, but I guess my hope is that you trust us enough to do some research and make some decisions that are going to make sense when we get into it. Like I said, in hindsight, we probably could have, if we had the foresight to know what was going to happen, you know, approach things a little bit differently in the beginning. So, yes, that's where we are, so.
You know, the whole face mask thing, and like, I know everybody's got a stance, and I talked to one person a little bit about it, but some of it is kind of hard, and I don't wanna say this, and it'd be mean, or derogatory, or that I'm trying to put somebody down. That's not what I'm trying to do, but it is one thing that I've thought about in the last 36 hours is, there, like in some of the emails I got, like face masks are important, and I agree with that. But we're also kind of looking at it like the only place that teachers are gonna get this is from the kids. And that's not true either. And so my point with that is I've gone to a lot of athletic events during the summer, and I've seen teachers, and I only use them because currently we're talking about people inside the building, that aren't wearing masks. And so, like, I don't know, I a little bit struggle with it kind of being a double standard, if that makes, you know, like, if it's okay not to wear it out in public, in a place where you can get it, okay, that's fine. But like, these kids aren't the only ones that have it. And so, like, a little bit, I kind of feel like if it's something you're gonna push for, I think it's something that you have to live. And for instance, and I'll bring this up, and I'm not picking on anybody, but just things I've noticed, like the last meeting, I made the comment about not being 6 feet apart. The Wednesday before, I came in to sign a check, and there were 5 adults sitting in the office within a 10-foot circle. And so, like, my feeling is like, I'm okay with being behind the masks, but that's gotta be something that's lived. And so, like, if it's not lived, I really have a hard time being behind that. Does that make sense? You know, and I say that being, I don't wear one in public, so like, but I also don't expect anybody else to necessarily have. I respect it if you want to wear one, but I don't know if that makes sense.
No, I understand.
And so that's where a lot of my issue with this comes, is like, what is something I can do, because I can do it, and that's what I believe, which is fine. But a little bit more is, like, what do I live? And that's where I really struggle with this, you know, like, and so I don't know, I'm out of words, sorry.
Well, I think some of it is, you know, if people are outside, they basically say that, well, if you're outside in the outdoors, that it's a lot, you know, your chances go way down outside. You go inside, you go into an office, yes, if you're in an office and you got 5-6 people standing in the office, you know, it shouldn't be a double standard. I mean, if the teachers are wearing them in their classrooms, take them off during class time to do their lectures and do whatever they want, and then leave, and once the kids leave, go into another teacher's room and start having a discussion face to face like you and I are now, without having their mask on. That's kind of a double standard. And if people see that and they understand that, they go, well, wait a minute here, this shouldn't happen. I know I see people in the streets who have them on, people who don't have them on. It's a choice, and I guess I relate a school building to a hog confinement. You got all these kids and all these pigs running around in one spot, and it's so much easier to contract it. Well, if we do our job and do social distancing and have the teacher up in front of the room and she takes her mask off and teaches, you know, she's how many feet away from the kids? Well, okay, well, that's acceptable, but, you know, everybody's gonna have to learn that, well, if this is gonna happen, we need to make sure that everybody follows the rules, no matter what rules we make up.
And I think to your point a little bit, I know I can only speak, you know, about myself. You know, I try to be really careful, and I probably even, because I like to be kind of stubborn sometimes, believe it or not, if you haven't noticed that already. I've tried to take it kind of the other extreme as far as, I probably do it in situations where I don't necessarily have to, just because I know that based on the stance that I'm taking, if you were to see me in a situation where I'm inside of 6 feet of somebody sitting there, it's gonna be awful tough for me to come back and say, you know, Kyle, I really think we should be wearing masks, but then you can say, well, you know, I actually saw you the other day with 13 people out in the middle of the street without wearing one. I mean, it's tough to do. You know, as far as staff is concerned, I get where you're coming from, and I give our staff a lot of credit, because obviously, I'm sure you've heard from some of the people that really adamantly believe in this because of their own personal situations and some of that stuff. Now, on the other side, we have some staff that I don't know that they necessarily believe it's important to do this. But like I said, I give them a lot of credit because while they're here, they do it. And I know it's not something that maybe they want to do, but they have enough respect for what we're trying to do to say, even though I don't want to do it, I'm going to put it on. But I think those people, when they get outside the building, I think it's tougher for them because they maybe don't necessarily buy into it as much as everybody else does. And I think sometimes they probably end up in some tough situations where, you know, I'm going about my life because this is what I believe in. But then when I go to school, you know, I'm also trying to respect the fact that, you know, this is what they want me to do at school. And it can be tough for them because I think they get caught in between sometimes.
All right, I understand that. I just like, sometimes that's just the visual and.
No, I agree, it's a
like-
perception thing.
And as far as like the outside thing, I understand that outside is better, but I also think there's studies as far as like if you're asymptomatic, like it's really tough to spread it also. So like, I mean, I don't know. I just, it's such a tough situation, and no matter what we're gonna do, there are gonna be people that are mad. And I guess we just have to live with that, but I don't, you know, I just feel some of the concerns that I've heard, like, I just need to say, or, you know, so that it gets out there, that everybody is maybe aware or whatever, but anyway.
Slade, can you hear us okay?
I sure can.
Do you want to say something? I've seen you kind of go in and out, so I don't want to leave you out here.
I mean, obviously it's a difficult situation because you have two pretty polarized camps on this issue, but I think we just need to be considerate to both sides on this. And I kind of left the last meeting feeling that we've come to the conclusion that we needed the administration to be able to have some flexibility on this. So I wasn't surprised when we had this, you know, slight change. That's kind of what we set it up to do. You know, I guess I just asked Kevin that we only make changes when they're absolutely necessary, not make any frivolous changes, and, you know, put this burden on people that don't want to do things. From what I've seen so far, it's not, you know, you have one camp who thinks we should be wearing masks 24/7, inside, outside, put in bed, and then you have another camp who says we don't ever need them ever. And from what I've seen so far, by using masks in a limited amount that we have been, I really don't see the problem with that. I think the staff feels safer with what we've done with that. I want to have the staff's back. At the same time, I want to consider both sides of the issue on this. And so far, I've seen a pretty level response to how the administration came.
I would have to agree with Slade. I mean, you know, the emails and phone calls I've had, I've only had very few that have been upset with this whole thing. But the vast majority, I would say 85% of the phone calls, texts, emails I've got have been that, you know, it's only in the hallway, and it's, you know, whenever the teacher walks up to help answer a question for a kid, that you mandate that it's kind of, you know, it's up to the teacher if she wants or he wants to do such a thing. And that's how I came out of the last few meetings was, well, let's roll with it and see where this ends up. And like I said, there was a select few who said, well, you know, this needed to be mandatory. You guys needed to have a vote on it rather than just leaving it up to the administration. think that, you know, since there is a demand for a vote, the majority, like I said, of the people I've talked to said, you know, teachers and staff, there were some outside people I talked to today that have no dealings with the school whatsoever, that basically supported, you know, you're gonna wear a mask in the hallway, that's great. If you're gonna do whatever you can to do to minimize this, that would be great. And we think that's the right thing to do. So it's a back and forth situation. And, you know, what I see is what happened is, you know, we're trying to hit the point of, we've got some people who would say, well, we don't need to have our kids wear a mask, and I haven't had one person tell me this needs to be mandatory, that we have to have a mask be worn the whole time in school. I didn't have one say that. And they thought that was a pretty good concession to have these kids wear them in the hallways where they're elbow to elbow, but yet they can remove them once they get to the classroom, unless the teacher mandates it that they have to wear it in the room because they may have an underlying health condition, or they have somebody that they're caring for that does too. So I think this last thing, I was kind of expecting some type of a move to wearing the masks during times where everybody's elbow to elbow, but I guess that was unforeseen by others.
Well, I suppose we could keep stirring this thought for a while, but I don't know, just to throw in my idea or whatever. Just so everybody knows, I did a little bit of calling around and figuring out the schools that I know of that don't have a mask mandate, just so people know what's going on locally. Menno, Hanson, Canastota, Viber, Hurley, Bridgewater, Emory, Irene, Wakanda. Those are the local ones. And so that's, it is probably more common not to have masks than it is to require them, just for public information. I think it's hard because we've kind of wandered different places. My opinion was that when we passed this, that this was our directive, and I didn't see it probably maybe like Slade did, that it was very, up in the air. I felt like when we got to a certain point, then we moved to yellow, another certain point we got to red. It was kind of a direct policy that we had here. So maybe again, that's where we fell down, but we did pass it. So I'm like, how do you rectify and go back? So the thing that I'm thinking about is when you guys had the meetings here with the committee, and then I was looking at these notes you sent out, and kind of that, you did a YouTube video, 2 of them, I think, and you said 136 families had input, 43 staff, and many other calls and emails. And so I'm like, if that's where this came from, with that large body, and then this is what launched this, maybe that's where we need to start again. Just saying, hey, let's do the green, yellow, red. And so that would probably be my suggestion, where that's where everybody seemed to come together. And I know it's kind of been diverting different places since then. But so that's probably where I stand, is to, let's get back to that, and then if we need to move it, but that's just me.
I guess I kind of agree, we can go to the green, yellow, red thing, and so I guess I agree, and I understand we're gonna have to make changes, And so if we have to make a change and we feel that face coverings are more needed in the hallway, like, I'm not totally opposed to that, but what I'd rather see us accomplish more tonight is more of a, like, what is our idea of how do we go from green to yellow to red? More so than just like randomly on a Saturday, we get an email and all of a sudden we're in yellow, and not that we haven't had cases, but I tried to look it up in the career and I couldn't find out the exact numbers we've had since like the 21st to yesterday. He can always put the numbers down.
343 today.
Good. Not about the state, I'm more concerned about locally.
Well, and here's the deal with that. So, if you want to go back to the committee meetings that we had, when we had those, what we explained to those people is, we've asked you to be a part of this because we think you give an accurate representation of the different areas of our community. We'd like to get your input. You as a committee member, we'd like to see you, have the opportunity to have some of these conversations with people outside of this room and bring some of those thoughts and some of those concerns to these meetings so we can figure out how we want to go about building this plan. We collected as much data as we possibly could, and then, basically as an administrative team, we sat down and said, okay, this is what we think we need to do based on the input that we have. We took that, we sent it out to teachers, the committee members, to the board, looking for additional input coming back from them in terms of, is there anything that we missed here? Is there anything that we have in this particular plan that you maybe either don't agree with, that we interpreted incorrectly when we were having committee meetings, so on and so forth. Understanding throughout the entire process that this was going to be a living document. And yes, the Department of Health was recommending that 3-tiered, system or state or whatever it happened to be as far as when you would move, so on and so forth. Now, with that said, I certainly didn't anticipate that we would have to make adjustments 2 days into the, I knew we were gonna have to make adjustments, but I didn't know we were gonna have to kind of take a step back and say, okay, I know we said in green we weren't gonna do this, but I think we need to maybe tighten that up a little bit so when we go to yellow that we, go a little bit further. Also understanding that, there's not gonna be some, and when I watched the meeting from the 10th, I know we talked about this too, there's not gonna be any clear-cut way to know what has to happen in order for us to move from green to yellow. That's gonna be part of the conversations that we have with the Department of Health in terms of, what do you think we need to do? This is what our plan looks like. This is what we currently have in place. Based on the situation and the scenario, what are we gonna have to do to try to make sure that we can keep moving forward without having to just absolutely shut everything down? And that's the thing that when we had those committee meetings to start with, the first meeting we had, people kind of came in and said, people would really like to know how many cases are we going to have before we shut down the school or before we do this. And then it kind of evolved into, okay, now you have your 3 stages that we're talking about doing. What's going to have to happen for us to go from green to yellow? And we talked about that at the August 10th meeting a little bit too when I went back and watched it today. There's just so much gray area as far as what could happen. We could get 2 cases on opposite ends of the building, and they could have nothing to do with each other, and we could still be like, okay, I think we're okay to stay in green with what we have going on here. Now, at the same time, we could get 2 cases in a 2-day period stemming from the same part of the building that we find out are connected to one another, and now all of a sudden we got to take a step back and say, okay, we have a potential issue here as far as this really getting out of control because, we got 1 case and the next day we got another one. Looks like they stem from the same thing. Are we going to have to potentially shut something down in order, to make this work? And I think that's the other thing to keep in mind is the green, the yellow, and obviously the red when we close is something to kind of build off of. But if you look at some of the stuff that's already been happening across the state, and I'll let Mr. Voss, if he hasn't fallen asleep on his phone over there, mention something about Library Hurley because he's kind of close to something that's going on there. But, this afternoon, O'Gorman quarantined 40 kids after having 2 cases, 2 positive cases in the building. that's not something that we have in our plan as far as, having to potentially shut down a certain grade level or something like that. We just kind of understand that could potentially happen based on our conversations with the Department of Health. Beersford, if you've been watching the news at all, they have 3 or 4 confirmed cases in their staff, and they've quarantined another 8 teachers. And again, if that scenario comes up here, I don't know exactly what that's gonna look like, but my guess would be that's gonna involve having to close something down for a certain amount of time. And again, that's not something that's directly or specifically outlined in kind of what we have as far as our structure is set up. So I guess, what I'm kind of asking is, that you're okay, or you support the fact that we're gonna have to make some decisions here that aren't gonna be super fun, but that we can also do a better job of, getting some stuff out of you saying, hey, we talked to the Department of Health today, this is what we're telling us, we're thinking we might have to transition from this to this, or we're thinking about we might have to shut this down or shut that down. I just wanna let you know ahead of time, if you have any comments or concerns, give me a call and let me know what you think, and we can go from there. I certainly don't have a problem with that, and I think that would probably be productive just to keep everybody in the loop. But I think when we get into this, and we really get into it, it's gonna be tough for us to just throw all that stuff on the back burner and say, well, we gotta have a meeting quick because we gotta talk about all this stuff and figure out what's gonna happen. And that's not anything negative against you, that's just kind of like, I think when this happens, we're gonna be neck deep in a lot of stuff that we gotta try to figure out as quick as we can.
I don't think a meeting is necessary, but us being informed is very much necessary.
I don't know about necessarily being informed, but my thing is like, and maybe nobody else agreed on it, but I think they did. We all kind of agreed we dropped the ball on how we went about creating this thing. And so my fear is, well, okay, yeah, we created it through the committee meetings, and now we're just gonna say, yeah, go ahead, and then you're gonna make all the decisions. I really think that, like, I think it's probably something that not only do we need to be informed of, but I think it's probably something that we probably need to be somehow involved in. I don't think it's,
So, and that's the thing, if you wanna do that, you certainly can, but I mean, if you're gonna be involved in the action that takes place there, then we're gonna have to have a meeting. I mean, there's no way around that. I mean, we
Well,
can't.
you could probably have 2 people on a small group that, hey, you could bring them in or something. We could probably designate something like that. But I'm afraid if you take a bigger step by yourself, and we just saw what happened with just the hallway thing, then I'm afraid you're out there again all by yourself, and we're gonna see a repeat. So I think it's worth figuring out how we can do it, because I think we're looked at as the representatives for the community, and I'd rather take the heat, even though it's not fun, but I'd rather protect you in that. And I don't know how to do it well, I think that's where we have to be.
So if you want to go that route, you would probably have to have a committee of 2 people that, when we have something come up, you're gonna have to, basically drop whatever you're doing and come in, in the middle of the day. Well, we already have the hospital, and we've been having daily meetings with the hospital about, trying to make sure we're staying up to what's going on in the community and all that stuff. So obviously, in addition to working with the Department of Health, we would be working with the local hospital to try to get their opinion on what's going to happen. That would be one of those things where these decisions are going to have to come pretty quick. So, it's not like we're going to be able to wait till, I guess my weird fear is just the timing and, how quick we're going to have to try to react to this. And if you want to have 2 of you be a part of that, I don't have a problem with it, but, there's the potential that could be, we find out about a case at 10 o'clock in the morning, we gotta figure out what we're gonna do and how we can handle that, and what potentially, what dominoes could, fall after that. And if we're gonna do that, time is gonna be kind of of the essence on that.
And that's probably the hard work of it, but I think we probably need to talk a little bit about where you have probably some leeway to make some moves, at least temporarily, and where we probably need to step in. And I think that would probably help the community and us a lot. and it's not gonna be an easy discussion, but I think we probably need to figure out a few different areas and say, this is probably an idea, rather than just kind of playing it by ear.
I would somewhat agree, like, I'm not that, like, whatever, if you have to send kids home or quarantine a couple kids, like, not that you couldn't do that and we have a couple hours to get together and talk, like, I would have feelings of, like, some of those things I would be okay with you doing without the board, but like to implement face coverings in the hallway, like, I just think that has to have board involvement at some level, if it's 2 people or if it's 5 people, and I know it seems dumb to me if we have to meet every week, that would be dumb, I don't want to do that, but at the same time, like, I do think there's some expectation that, and like I say, maybe that the board wasn't involved enough, or maybe that we were not aggressive enough on saying, hey, we have to be involved, you know, and so I just feel like that's maybe, not that we're going to change how it's done, because just like the face covering things, I kind of understand that everybody kind of seems to be okay with face coverings, but just the fact that we're involved in, does that make sense?
Again, I think we're flirting with that line between, you know, board and day-to-day stuff. I mean, that's the only thing that I worry about over there.
I agree, but we're also talking about a plan and it's a policy. I mean, we use both words tonight, and so
But you gotta make it a policy.
No, I understand, but we're using both terms tonight, so like, yes, we're flirting and we're walking the gray line. We're referring to it as a policy and we're referring to it as a plan, and so maybe we just totally need to decide if it's a policy or if it's a plan, but like, at the same time, I understand we're flirting with gray areas, but this is also uncharted territory, and so like,
Well, the plan was submitted, given to us to follow a plan. I mean, there's a difference between a plan and policy. Policy is voted upon with the board members, and it is set in stone. And a plan is, okay, here's what we're gonna come up with, and here's what we're dealing with. And here, like, Mark has the green, yellow, red, you know, they submitted this plan to us, and it was my understanding at the time was it was going to be up to the administration to follow that plan, and if something arises in the school of what we need to get done, that they had some leeway to say, okay, we see this is gonna happen, this is happening right now, we need to maybe step it up a notch, or say, no, we don't need to do it. But I believe the public wants it to be policy, saying, before this happens, we want the administration to contact the board members, and like you said, and having two people from the board being on this little committee, have him contact them and say, this is what we've seen, and this is what we're gonna be probably gonna have to implement, because this is just, it's getting too tight for these kids in here. We need to do this or that, and have those 2 board members to say, yeah, I think we should move forward with that. We don't obviously want to interfere with the day-to-day stuff that the administration should be taking care of on their own, because that's what they get paid to do. They get paid to make decisions. And there are some decisions that do need board approval, but not necessarily where we should have to sit over and hover over an administration and say, you're gonna do this no matter what. I think there needs to be, like I said, with this whole thing, yes, we can make this a policy, and we're gonna follow these red, yellow, greens, and you're gonna have something carry over from that green into that yellow, so you're gonna have something that's of a lighter color, like you said, there's your gray area. We're tapping onto this gray area in between yellow and green right now. It's not necessarily a yellow, It's not necessarily agreeing, we're gonna be sitting right in here, and we're just gonna follow this until something worse happens, and then it will be a yellow, or it will be unfortunately a red. So I think, like I said, I think we need to, you know, the superintendent, and the administration, they have their jobs to do, and we can't be hovering either. So, we need to, I believe, you know, they submitted this plan, we need to talk, we're beating it to death. You know, and if we wanna have a little bit, have a small committee of one or two of us involved in this, deal where Kevin is in contact with us and is willing to call us and say, guess what, we had a case today, this is the move we're thinking we're gonna have to make, I'm gonna need you guys to come over and talk to me and see what you guys think. Well, that's what we'll have to do, but we need to, I guess, you know, like I said, the public, you know, there's some of the public that want this to be, you know, if you're gonna create a plan, and you should probably just make a policy and then follow those rules. But like you said, we can't have a board meeting for every little thing here and there either.
Just if I could clarify, I had talked to the Associated School Board today too, it's kind of asking about the whole plan versus policy versus regulation and stuff. He said, a COVID plan, and I quote, is not a snow day. That has to be a policy, and he said a plan is a policy. So, that this document is a policy. So,
Policy is not through boards, it has to be through.
exactly. Right. That's where I think the confusion was last meeting, because the way it was worded was, will require a motion to acknowledge review of the Freeman School District reopening plan. I asked about that, and he said, no, it should have been a motion to adopt it, or a motion to introduce it one time for a reading and then go to the next meeting, so people have public input. But he says that's definitely a policy.
I guess I'm kind of confused as to what we're planning on doing here tonight. You know, as a board, we're not here to micromanage every single decision. It's our job to put the pieces into play that we feel are going to facilitate the school. And we hire those people because we have faith in them, and we expect them to do the right thing, have the students and staff's interests, you know, at best hand. So for us to have to go back and second guess everything every time that somebody doesn't agree with what's going on, when there's so many different gray areas involved in this, it's going to be the longest school year in the history of the world when we do that, guys. I just don't think we should be second guessing, you know, the smallest of things. 4-minute mask wear in the hallway warrants, you know, what could turn out to be a 4 or 5 hour school board meeting. Man, that's a tough sell for me. I think that we hired the right people, let's let them do their job, and barring some sort of catastrophic event, I really don't see why we're getting involved in this.
So, we want or not want to do face covering action, and so does anybody have a motion?
Well, I think either way, whatever you want to do, I think you need to take an action on it. You know, whether you, so ultimately you have to decide, are you gonna say we're just not doing them and we're gonna remove them from our plan altogether? Or are you gonna say, you know, I was writing a couple things down here that we could potentially do, you know, essentially kind of 2 separate resolutions to address both of the things that we were talking about. One just being, you know, the Freeman School Board of Education believes the use of face coverings is an effective measure in the mitigation of COVID-19. As such, the board supports the use of face coverings in the school building, you know, whatever that has to be. And then, you know, and this would be the part you have to figure out, you know, the administration has a discretion to regulate the use of face coverings as it relates to the day-to-day operations of the school district. Or you just go the opposite route on it and you say, the Freeman School District Board of Education does not believe, you know, that masks are helpful in whatever it is we're trying to accomplish. And as such, we'll be removing the use of face coverings from any and all school district plans. Now, along with that, if you really want to have two of you, you know, kind of consult as part of this, I wrote, you know, the board designates such and such as COVID-19 committee members that will consult with the administration regarding adjustments to the district COVID-19 plan. And it could be more specific than just adjustments to the COVID, you know, it could be, doing it as part of the plan would probably make the most sense there. So, you know, if you want to go that route, or so on and so forth. I really think as much as it might rub people the wrong way, I think you just needed to decide, you know, we either want to do face coverings or we don't. And if we're going to do it, then I guess I would appreciate the opportunity for us to try to figure out when and how we're going to do that. And we can certainly consult with whoever the two board members would be. You know, if we get into a situation where whether it's we're going to move from green to yellow, or we're going to say, hey, you know what, we looked at this whole situation again, we think we need to make some adjustments here. These are what we're thinking about doing. We'll run it through the two committee members and say, this is why we think we're going to do it. We move forward, we do it, and then the board, to some degree, has been consulted on, you know, whatever action we plan to take. I don't have an issue with doing that, as far as.
Yeah, can I speak for a second?
Sure.
I've been doing this 28 years. I kind of agree with Slade here. What happens if your two board members don't agree with you? I mean, you're really entering a slippery slope when you want to start adding two board members to the day-to-day operation of the school. And you're really cutting off the legs of the superintendent. And I believe the board has an adopted policy that you guys have adopted that states that the superintendent is supposed to look out for the well-being of our children and our staff. That is adopted policy. And what happens is once you go down this road, where does it stop? Now, there's another decision Kevin makes that's not popular. So are we going to quit? I mean, are we going to have a committee meeting, board meeting on every decision? And there's a reason he's the highest paid employee in our district. And I guess if you don't trust him, then you probably need to get a different superintendent. Otherwise, you guys paid him, you adopted policies, and you empowered him to run our school and lead our school, and I think that's what you gotta do. If not, then you need to make a change. But this is a really slippery slope. I've been at this 28 years, and I've seen this happen. You do it for this, then pretty soon, okay, people were mad that you called school off, so now we gotta have our two board members decide if we're calling school off. I mean, it doesn't end. And there is adopted policy, and Kevin's in the handbook, or in the policy book, that says Kevin has the authority, and it is his duty to look out for the well-being of the kids and the staff.
Anybody got anything else?
I mean, I guess the problem I have with making a policy that either it's, you know, masks or it's not masks. You know, the thing I thought was nice about giving Kevin flexibility to do the changes he thought, you know, would help is that we can kind of mitigate how much that we thought we would have to use that. You know, in this instance, just in the hallways, obviously we're still in green, but there's a situation that has presented itself that if we don't address it, probably is going to keep us in green. So we made a slight. Now, if we go to where we make it policy that mask wearing is required, then are, certain teachers or whatever going to want to have masks during class all the time that don't have previous concerns? Is this going to turn into something where we went from having a lot of flexibility to, masks all day, all the time, or if we go no masks, then it's no masks ever? I mean, I don't understand why we got to the point where being flexible is a bad thing.
Yeah, actually, kind of the way we had left it was, teachers didn't feel comfortable that they would be willing to ask kids, but I didn't feel like it was mandatory, because it seemed like, even Slade, you had said, if someone tells me to do something, I'm not gonna do it. If someone asks me to do something, I'll probably do it. So it felt like when we left the meeting last time, that we kind of had this feeling like if teachers feel that they want the comfort or that they feel for their own health reasons, that they sure can ask the kids, and most kids are probably going to respond to that. And it felt like there was a lot of flexibility, but all of a sudden when a mandate came saying that the kids have to do something, and then the kids felt like all of a sudden there's these new rules, then there was all of a sudden this upheaval came. So it felt like the flexibility left with the mandate. So I think that's probably where things seem to fall apart.
My agreement, I agree with that just because we went from recommended to all of a sudden it was had to be, and I do agree with that. So I do struggle with that, and so again, I feel like if the kids aren't wearing it in the hallways, the teachers still have the option to wear it in the hallways and make them wear it in the room if they're one-on-one or whatever. I don't think we have to totally say masks or no masks. I think we can be reasonable like the plan is, and I just don't know why all of a sudden it had, with no local spike, that we went extreme that they were required. I understand if all of a sudden we have 50 cases locally, like, yes, I don't even care if at that point you want to say, no more green, we're going to yellow. I understand it's local, I get that. And so that's where more my issue is. I don't necessarily think that, I agree that we weren't involved, and maybe it's poor. I'm not saying we need to sit here and be in every meeting and whatever, but if we're doing a major change, such as recommended to required, I do think that's at the point where the board needs to be involved a little bit. And even if it's going from green to yellow, Kevin saying, hey guys, I'm pretty sure we're going to yellow, that's okay, I'm fine with that. I just think the board needs to be involved, and to me, required from recommended to required, that's a big step. And that's my only issue with this. I'm not saying no masks, even though I don't wear masks. I understand that we have to be safe. Now, do we have to be way over here to be safe? I don't know if we have to be that far, but I do think we have to take steps. And so to me, it's recommended to required that I have an issue with. But that's where I stand. And so I guess if we're all on different pages, I guess then we probably just need to, if we're not going to change it, then I guess we leave it where Kevin has the flexibility, and then that's what it is. But I just feel those are not minor changes.
Well, like I said at the beginning, when we talked today, we kind of understood that the plan contradicted itself a little bit, because we did have recommend early green phase, but all along we had that clause in there that said staff members reserve the right to require masks in certain situations. So, the option to require has always been there. What we ended up doing is, as far as the hallways and stuff are concerned, I guess that, we are still technically staff members, so we're just saying that they're required in that situation, but it probably stems from having a plan that contradicted itself to begin with in the first place.
Right.
So,
I got an issue at home, sorry.
Over here, okay.
Yeah, nothing an emergency, but bad enough that I gotta go.
Okay, see ya. And, yeah, so, I don't know, I just, like, we can sit here and talk about this for another 12 hours, and
Just went to the course.
right, I just feel like, and like you brought it up earlier, if we're gonna allow them to sit in the stands side by side, now we're requiring masks, well, I mean, that's essentially the same thing as the hallways. And so like, there is no teacher, I don't know exactly how it's done, but I don't believe the teacher has to run out into the hallway to be there while the kids are there. So if that's,
They actually do.
they're
They're supposed to be in the hallway between classes.
just watching or what?
Yeah, monitoring, making sure
Hey.
there's nothing crazy going on.
So, I don't know, that's where I stand. I think I'm fine with the plan being living, but I think drastic changes, I just feel that it has to be some involvement and.
I think more of a drastic change to me would have been mandatory wearing masks the whole day. Whereas this is, as everyone said, 4 minutes down the hallway, and, you know, to me, that's just a slight adjustment. If we had gone to, oh, now, we're gonna go to, everybody's gonna wear a mask tomorrow throughout the whole school day, that's drastic.
I agree, but the next step from where we're at now, Corey, is masks are required all day.
Right.
So that's pretty drastic, that we've gotten to the point where our next step is masks are required all day.
Right.
And so I think that is kind of a drastic step to be a half a step away from that being our school position. When, like Mark said, there are a whole bunch of schools in the area that it is, I'm assuming, recommended, or not even required. And so like, I just feel those are drastic things that, and I think the board has been pretty willing to change, like, even on our Spectator plan, like, the board was willing to go with that. We made some changes that even eliminated more people. So like, the board is pretty willing to go with and be in favor of the safety of the kids. So I don't think that we've gotten a whole lot of kickback. Now, while I have maybe argued that way, I have still voted in favor of this plan. So I think the board has still supported you pretty well. I just think that this is a spot where I think it's maybe a courtesy to say, hey, why don't you guys help me on this if it's drastic? And that's all that's where I'm standing. And that's all I'm saying. It's not that I'm opposed to face masks in the hallway. But like, if people are, that is a pretty drastic step, I do think. From recommended to, but. So now as far as, because all 5 of us are pretty far off the board, how do we want to, does anybody have some sort of idea, action, motion, recommendation from the board that they're willing to make that we can vote on and go with if that's what we're going to do? You have anything else, opinion other ways, like?
I mean, I honestly don't know what else I was under the impression, kind of like Slade was, that, we're gonna leave this open, we were gonna discuss things administratively and figure out if we have to adjust, and we'll adjust as we go. Obviously, in addition to sending the message out to everybody on Saturday to kind of inform them what was going on, I honestly don't even remember, did I send an email to you guys about that, or was it just? Okay. I suppose I can do a better job of trying to communicate that a little bit further on ahead of time and try to get some feedback. But like I said, I was under the impression that, that was something that we were gonna handle, and we took a look at it, analyzed it, and said that's what we thought we needed to do. So, I think the tough part here is, if we're gonna do something different than, us kind of constantly evaluating things and figuring out what we're gonna do, then, like I said, then I think you have to take like a hard line here and say, we're either not gonna do it or, whatever, because otherwise, my understanding is the best way to handle it would just be for us to kind of have the discretion to figure out how we're gonna regulate that during the school day. And I know walking away from one of the meetings, I can't remember if it was the last meeting or the August 10th meeting, I think Slade made a comment about, you know, I don't necessarily, I'm paraphrasing, I don't necessarily maybe agree with all the mask stuff, but I understand that they're a part of what's going on. So as the administration, you guys can try to find a way to use them as little as possible, or, you know, as effectively, whatever the case was. I walked away thinking, okay, well, we're gonna have to make some adjustments, and there might be some cases where we have to use them, but we're gonna try to minimize the amount of time that we actually put a kid in a mask. So that was kind of the thing where we started off a little bit looser, and then obviously we got in 2.5 days, 3 days, and said, okay, I don't think the loose thing's gonna work. We're trying to be a little more proactive than reactive, and we think that if we get some of these kids in a mask in some of these limited situations, that we can help keep this away a little bit longer. So that was kind of the thought.
Say it was like 10 o'clock that morning, and we already had the discussion on Wednesday. There's way too many kids in the hall. They're nowhere near social distance. We were already thinking on Wednesday, what could we possibly do? And so you just.
Let's see what happens over the course of the next couple of days. If it gets better, because this was just the first day, you know, and then by the time we got to Friday, it's just like, it's not gonna work. And I realize we don't have a case in the building yet, but in the event that we would get one, I think this is gonna spiral out of control rather quick, because we're not trying to, you know, be more proactive, I guess, is the way we were looking at it, so.
I guess personally, as far as this being our plan, if the require a motion to acknowledge the review of the Freeman School District plan, and it said in here that it was required in agreeing to wear masks, I would have been opposed to this plan.
Okay.
I feel that we are giving people the option to wear the mask. I think we should also need, and teachers, the ability to require masks, but in one-on-one and close learning situations with one exception, and everybody was okay with that. And so I think if we're going to say that those are our scenarios that we're okay with, I don't think that I would be okay with saying I'm ready to require a mask when we are not giving people the choice, and I don't think we have a reason to be not giving them a choice at this point, to a point. Like, that's just where I stand. I mean, that's where I stand. You guys can say where you stand, and we can go from there.
I'd probably agree with that kind of where we were at, where teachers had the choice, kids had the choice, we're still in green. When we go to yellow, then things absolutely change. So I would probably agree with that, but you guys say what you're thinking. We probably need to find some kind of common thread, whether it's for or against what we're saying.
So what does the green actually say? That it's the choice?
Okay, so the description on this second column here.
Yep.
So green tier 1, it says no cases of COVID-19 in the school building, amenable to moderate numbers of active cases of COVID-19 present in the community and surrounding areas. School is in session for all, in parentheses, 100% attendance, students and staff on campus. Students and staff are encouraged to wear face coverings during times they are unable to social distance from one another. So then, do you want the rationale too?
No.
Okay.
I would agree with that.
I don't feel that we're cutting your legs out. I don't feel we're taking the right away from the teachers. I do still think we're giving the right to some people that choose not to wear a mask. That's where I stand. I think that's fair to everybody involved.
So I guess what I would follow up with on that is the clause within there that says staff members reserve the right to require masks regardless of the scenario. So myself or Will as a staff member, don't we then reserve the right to say, we think kids should wear masks in the hallway?
Right, but I think everybody is kind of under the impression that like it was all in the hall, in the classroom, like they can require that. And I think if you have a kid come into your room or in your office to speak, I fully think you have the right to require them to wear a mask if that is what you require, but the hallway, I don't see that as anybody's room. I understand you can't totally social distance, but outside of this building, and I know that's not totally our care so much, but the kids aren't socially distancing outside of this school building either.
So what if I were to say hypothetically, we say, you know, that you're gonna allow staff to continue doing what they're doing in their rooms, so on and so forth. But you're not gonna make any requirement, you know, during other parts of the day. So we basically have to stick to exactly what it says in there. So what happens when we get to yellow and it says masks may be required in certain areas of the building? Are we gonna end up having another conversation about what areas of the building are appropriate to do that? Or
I don't think so. I would be fine with that being, when we get to yellow and that being a required thing. I don't have a problem with that.
how about, and I'm being Don Hotchkiss right now, so there's, take that for what it's worth. So let's say hypothetically, again, we say, okay, that's what the route we're gonna take, we're not gonna say anybody has to wear masks in the hallway. I then get calls from 10 parents basically saying, my kid doesn't feel comfortable in the hallway. Are we just okay with letting them walk away and say, I'm not sending my kid to the school building anymore?
Okay, had we not sent out the email that required it in the hallway to begin with, we wouldn't be in this situation, and we would have, I don't feel like, if it's required in the hallway, I don't understand, if it's not required in the classroom, why that would be then a big difference. You can't tell me they're totally 100% social distance the whole time.
No, but I think there's a certain level of comfort kids have in the classroom compared to being out in the hallway with 100 and some kids. And that's just the point I'm trying to make. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. Everybody might just come to school and just be fine with it. I don't know, but I'm saying, you know, I already had some people allude to the fact that their child felt uncomfortable in those situations. If we decide to do this, are we prepared to say that we're okay with those kids, you know, leaving the school and doing whatever, whether it be, I'm gonna elect to homeschool my kid because they don't feel comfortable in there, or, you know, whatever the case might be.
And that is a point, I understand that, and we could have that 10 happen. But what happens if we required and 10 people say it the other way? Like, this is a no-win situation. We could potentially have that happen regardless of the decision we make tonight. And so my thing is the plan is what we accepted, and I know it says whatever, require the right, but like when we talked about it, we were talking about one-on-one, close contact in the room, and nobody even balked at that. And I don't even know, did you even get any calls of people saying, one-on-one, I don't even want my kid wearing a mask then? Like,
Yeah, I do.
I mean,
There's just some people that it doesn't matter what we're gonna do, they're gonna say, my kid's not gonna wear a mask regardless of what you say. So that's the part that it makes this difficult, because yes, I mean, even before we said that we were gonna do it in the hallway, we already had people saying that, you know, you're not gonna make my kid wear a mask regardless of what's going on. So, I mean, that issue has been the same since the beginning of all of this.
The thing that I see is when people decided whether to stay in school or to opt out, those were the terms that they were aware of. And so that's what we started with. And so I feel like, okay, if that's what people were aware of coming in, I felt that was most comfort. And people didn't opt out at that time. If we change one thing, hallways, and so, I don't know, I think there would be some people that, you know, want their way and whatever, but at the beginning of the school season, that's the way it was, and they chose to be here. So hopefully we retain everybody, but I don't know, when a large group of people and family and staff come up with a plan, I think that's the best place to start again, is where they left off. And I don't know, it's hard.
as hard as nobody's ever been down this path before. So now we're signing something new, and that's, it's different, so that's.
So, okay, if then as we stand, Corey and Slade, I think you didn't really say for sure what your stance is.
Well, but I guess from what I've heard from all the people who have contacted me, I stated this earlier, all the people who contacted me, I would say there was 3 people out of the 20-some that I talked to that said, we don't believe our kids should have to wear a mask in school. There's 3. The rest of them were like, you know, what they've come up with, we can live with, it's not a big deal. So, if I was to take a majority of the people who contacted me and said, we think it's fine with what's going on right now, versus the 3 people who contacted me and said, this isn't, you know, we don't want this to happen at all. You know, I would have to vote with the vast majority of the people who contacted me.
I had that same experience as well. I actually didn't have a single person contact me who was in favor of just an outright mask ban. It was all people that wanted us to be flexible and continue doing what we're doing. I'll say too, you know, I had one of the kids in my house go to a summer camp, Camp Judson, this year. And a week after this person got back from camp, we see on the news that 3 kids from this camp had contracted COVID. And got a phone call from somebody else saying, hey, wasn't, you know, you're a student at this camp? Yeah, you know, all right, we should go get him checked out. Well, after that, I think I just looked it up. There were 96 cases of confirmed COVID in Camp Judson from that one 4-day camp. So, yeah, we don't have any cases now, but I mean, it can go from 1 to 96 really stinking quick. And if we think that 4 minutes in the hallway wearing a mask is going to minimize the chances of us going from green, we're going to skip right to it. There's not going to be, you know, once it hits, it's going to hit. If it doesn't hit, great. I hope it doesn't. But I mean, if we need to make some small tweaks to prevent that, I really don't see that as good.
And you know, maybe in looking at this, and we talked about this at the beginning of the year, maybe it was more paranoia than anything else. Maybe we were off base in saying that we should have started the year in green. You know, even though what we had down said that we weren't gonna potentially move yellow until we had a confirmed case in the, you know, in the school building. You know, maybe we would have just been better off to say we're gonna start the year on yellow, and we're gonna say in this area, and whatever happens to be that you're gonna wear masks. And again, I realize that that's hindsight. You're looking backward and saying, well, based on how everything turned out now, if we would have done this, it would have been, you know, better. You know, and I'm just throwing that, you know, I don't know. Like I said, I think we're all in here trying to do what we think is best. And we're trying to accommodate everybody's opinion outside of this room. And I think at the end of the day, what we need to do is we need to step back and say, I understand that people have this opinion. I understand that people have this opinion. What are the people that are specializing in this stuff telling us makes the most sense for us to do? And when we sent out surveys and different things while we were going through this process, one of the things that we talked about a lot was, you know, if we sent something out as simple or as basic as saying, we're either going to put together a plan where we try to mitigate the spread of COVID, or we're going to go back to complete normal. If 90% of people would have said, I just want to go back to, you know, everything being normal like it was last year. Would that have actually been the right thing to do? And that's the thing that I struggle with on surveys sometimes, is just because you survey people and get their input, doesn't mean what comes back from them is actually going to be the right thing to do for the safety of the kids. And that's the thing that always concerns me about that kind of thing. So, you know, again, I'll go back to, I brought this up earlier, you know, we're thinking masks are important, and we want them to be worn in certain areas of the building because, you know, like I said, the health officials are telling us, we have conversations with the hospital, they're telling us, you know, why not do that to try to be proactive and prevent some of this stuff. On the other side of things, we have people saying, you know, I don't want my kid to wear a mask. Okay, I mean, and that's an opinion, but again, what's the rationale behind them not wanting to wear one? Is it because it's somehow detrimental to what's going on?
I had a call about it. There's one parent that said their kid came home crying and didn't want to go to school for a while because they were so scared, and that people were saying, gotta wear a mask, gotta wear a mask, and there's these masks, and it was like a kindergartner or a first grader, and he basically shut down. So, and
I think
plus,
some of that's in the approach too, and I think you even brought that up
Yeah.
at the last meeting, you know,
but they were shocked at that, here's this kid at home that didn't want to go to school and was crying. And so that is the other side that, and then who, you know, if I'm working on the farm doing, cleaning out a grain bin, I wear a mask. And I can't wait to get out of that thing, and the minutes, I can just count, you know, it's the seconds. Okay, I'm almost done, I can take this thing off. You know, what does that do to, you know, learning and education? It's gotta take kids' attention span, the heat and all that down too. I'm assuming, there's probably some study out there, but you're not gonna be at 100%. And so there is, I understand the safety, but there is another side to it, that it can be scary to kids, and it can be, you know, cumbersome and hot, and it does distract from education.
Yeah, but that's, you're talking in the classroom, we're talking for 4 minutes walking down the hallway, taking it back off, and sitting in the class where you're breathing, you know, just regularly. If it's a mandate, we're mandating it throughout the whole school, the whole time, that can be worrisome. Yeah, but I've grown up with asthma my whole life. I wore gray masks forever. I guess, you know, did it affect me? Well, maybe. Some people argue yes. I mean, I scooped out plenty of bean bins and corn bins with having asthma, and it was one of those things. I had that with me no matter where I went, and I wore it when I needed to wear it. And was it mandatory? No, but for my own health, I did it because I probably wouldn't be here if I didn't wear it. Hadn't worn it.
and
I think this is.
piggyback off of that.
I think this is they're wearing it for a minimum amount of time.
How many of the high school teachers require masks in the classroom?
I think basically the majority of them, if they're using, I know like special ed room and some of those people where they're working one-on-one, they require if the teacher's right there. I know Mrs. Lupero says, you know, she wants a kid to have the mask in the room, but she only requires that they wear it, you know, if they're working one-on-one.
I thought that was really, really good.
So, and kind of piggyback on what you said, you know, I don't know that it's feasible to get to a point where you say everybody has to wear one the entire time they're in the building, or even the entire time they're in the classroom, regardless of, you know, where we get to as far as spread is concerned. Because my guess would be if we get to the point where we think that everybody has to wear one from the time they get in the building until the time they walk out of the building, we probably shouldn't be here in the first place. So, you know, I think there's some gradual steps here as far as, you know, we're saying in this area, that area, because it's crowded, makes sense. You know, the next step, the next reasonable step, I think, would be, you know, we start talking in the classroom. You know, if I'm at my desk, I don't have my mask on. If I get up and I'm gonna go somewhere else in the room or whatever, I put my mask on. Or something to the point of my feet hit the ground and I get up on my desk, I would have to put a mask on. But I don't think we're ever gonna get to the point where we just say, I have to sit in the classroom with my mask on, and I don't get to take it off for the entire day that I'm here, because I just, like I said, if we get to that point, I just don't know that we should be here first. So I think there are things as far as looking at the practicality of some of this too, that weigh into what we're ultimately trying to decide on to do.
I would probably argue that personally, I think we're going to be to a point where we have a mask. I think we're to a point where we don't even have a case, and we're already starting to require it. I think as soon as there's a case, my guess is it's gonna be a push to require it all over the school. And so, I think there is a time where we're gonna require it. I think.
But I do think that side gets back to what Mark brought up there. Like, honestly, I do think if I was a kid, you know, I'll say we've been sitting here for almost 2 hours now, and I've had this on the whole time, and I think I've said some pretty profound things, so it's obviously not slowing me down a whole lot right now.
Right.
But I think there is a point to what Mark said, that if we're expecting a kid to come to school and sit in the school building for 7+ hours with this on their face the whole time, I think from an academic standpoint and from just a mental exhaustion standpoint, that's going to do something. And I think if you're weighing that versus the benefits of wearing them to try to prevent the spread of what we have going on, then realistically, I just don't know that it makes sense to put kids into that situation, and you'd be better off trying to do something remotely where they don't have to leave. And that's kind of where I was coming from on that, as far as, I think there's other options, or even maybe doing some type of split schedule where you don't have everybody come in. You start considering things like that before you would consider putting a mask on a kid for 7+ hours a day.
All right, so are we taking, are we gonna take an action, or is everybody, do we have a majority to not do it, or do we have a majority to do it? I think we need to start there, or we're not gonna, we're just gonna keep going back and forth.
I thought we had
Do,
Cody, you and I on the same
okay.
thread, or is that wrong?
No. Okay.
No, that's right.
That's correct.
So then I think then I think we're gonna cross a whole bunch of lines here, but maybe I'll step, if I'm out of line by saying this, I think then it sounds like we're okay with using the plan still, but just not okay with, not necessarily requiring it in the hallway.
So basically, you want to, I'm trying to think about how the word gets done.
Basically, the motion would probably be that.
We approve masks as outlined in the plan, and the administration does not have the discretion to adjust based on the, because there's two parts to that.
Right, I understand what you're saying, and it's hard because like, yes, I do want you to have the ability to adjust. I just think going to require is too much. Does that make sense?
So,
Like,
so what you're saying is this. The motion would be made to follow the plan. However, in the event of having one student in the building, having that it would go to, we're gonna require them to wear it.
to going to step
Two.
2, you would then require, and I'm okay with that, so like, I guess essentially now you're gonna make a lot of people mad if I say this, and maybe not a lot, but a few people, like, if we're like, okay, the plan, whatever, and we walk out, and tomorrow you're like, we're going to yellow, like.
Just had a phone call from a parent. We had this is my student has tested positive, and Kevin would have the discretion to say, we have our positive, we're moving to yellow, this is when we're gonna require it.
Yes.
which is in the plan.
Correct.
I don't know,
Right.
one, that's probably where we, if we'd have the two board members to talk about it.
That's where I agree, Mark, I don't know, but I will leave that discretion up to you. I feel you're going to make a choice that is
I think
reasonable and.
we gotta give Kevin some, you know,
Right.
some discretion in this thing, because
I-
otherwise, we're doing his job and we just will not have him here, and you can be the new superintendent.
I agree, but I'm not saying I want to do his job, I'm just saying I want to
Right.
follow. the
That's
plan
what-
as
that's
it
what
is.
I mean.
Yeah.
So, I
So,
mean,
so
we
how
gotta
would
give
we,
him some
how would we do
discretion.
this? Okay, so the Freeman School District Board of Education believes the use of face coverings is an effective, and I'm getting a little wordy here, but
Yep.
is an effective measure in the mitigation of COVID-19. As such, the board, supports the use of face coverings in the building. The administration has been directed to administer the use of face coverings as outlined in
The plan.
the school district reopening plan.
There you go.
That sounds great.
Sound good?
But before, hey, before that motion's made, can I ask a question before that motion's made?
Sure, go for it, Shane.
Okay, so I'm trying to isolate my elementary students away from the high school, because, realistically, it's gonna probably enter the high school long before it's gonna enter my elementary school. I have middle school kids that come down to the elementary for class, and I want those kids in masks because they are meeting my elementary kids in the hallway. We are isolated, we're a lot more isolated at elementary than at the middle school or in high school. And I mean, realistically, the high school kids, my elementary kids are in their little bubbles in Freeman. The high school kids are all out and about, they're gonna bring it into our building long before my elementary kids. And I don't want those middle school kids coming down to my hallway, meeting my kids without masks on. Because we've done a pretty good job at elementary, isolating by grade.
Why don't you have them all walk on one side of the hallway?
We do, but you try to get sixth graders to, I have to stand in the hallway and yell at them to go to the right side. I do that all day long, Mark. As soon as I'm not there, they're going down the middle of the hallway and they're face to face with my elementary kids that are on the right side of the hallway.
This is gonna sound so hypocritical, I think. But I could actually be okay with.
I mean, we're trying to
There you
isolate.
go.
And this
I
is,
like-
and I think this is
and-
a perfect example of why we're kind of asking for the
I-
flexibility to do something like that.
And I understand, but like, and. I don't.
I guess my question,
I mean, are they in the hallway at the same time?
well, that was the question I was gonna ask you. I understand what you're trying to do. Do you have other elementary classes in the hallway the same time the sixth graders are when they come down there?
Yes, they meet a class going to music and then they meet the fifth graders shift into the other class. I mean, we've done it, it's easier, it's a lot easier at elementary to isolate.
Should
Can we
have-
delay them coming in by 3 minutes or something till the second bell rang?
It's,
Should we have the sixth graders walk outside and around the entire building and come in a different door?
Well, that's unreasonable in the winter.
the-
I know,
The problem is, most of these board members, you guys haven't been in the building to see how this stuff works.
Well,
I mean, that's.
But you
that's
guys
why
are-
you're supposed
it's just
to
like
trust
we're-
us.
You guys are doing temp checks every, like twice a day, right?
Yep,
These kids are playing with each other after school?
nope.
They're not?
You know, Mark, I can't control what anyone does outside of school.
Right.
And I told my staff, you know what, I can't control what you do, but you have to understand, what you do in your personal life, there's gonna be consequences in our building if you choose to be not safe.
Well, I mean, we could get so specific that we isolate every grade from itself. But, there's a point where you start getting so controlling that it's not school anymore.
You have
I don't think our parents wanna go back to remote learning either, Mark.
a bunch different classes.
Would it be impossible for the teacher to wait and then walk them into the hallway after the elementary kids are through?
If you wanna have a perfect world and do this.
I know it's not
teachers
ideal.
move, you know,
The kids stay in the same classroom.
And for
The simpler thing is to just require them to wear a mask when they're down in my hallway. I mean, then it's not that big an issue, because I make my fifth graders wear masks when they come out, because they're meeting the sixth graders in the hallway.
So I asked my son this morning on the way to school, is it uncomfortable for you to wear a mask in the hallway? Is it a bad thing? He said, no, I don't care. I said, you think that it's a bad thing to be intermixing with these other kids with a mask on? No. I said, is it, would you feel comfortable without one in this whole herd of kids? And he said, yeah,
Did you play baseball this summer?
yeah,
In a herd of kids?
but it's outside.
He still touched the bat, touched the ball?
No, he's his own bat.
He didn't ever catch the ball?
Well, he played for Freeman.
Yeah.
That was a joke, by the way.
But
That was a
I,
joke.
and so like, that's where like I kind of, and I know it's outside, but the interactions are like, the kids are still touching and like, so like,
Right, you're back to that argument about, we're trying to minimize, but we can't control what's outside.
Right.
So,
Because that's when those kids had their helmet, their masks, their gloves, Yeah,
Here's what you guys need to think about before you vote on this. There's a lot of schools that haven't done what we have, and they've already got COVID in their building. And Mark referenced Vibrant Early, that's my daughter's school. They started pre-COVID basically, and they've already got COVID in their school. We've been going over a week, and we are fortunate that we don't have it, but I think some of it is because of what we have done with our plan and what we are requiring our students to do.
I think I will agree that if we had a case, our plan would probably minimize the spread. I don't think that necessarily what we've done has kept COVID out of our school. Like, I don't think. I don't know.
I guess I kind of look at it this way, if we're taking the approach here that, you're going to direct us to administer the use of them as outlined in the plan. I realize this is going to maybe take us to being a little bit more reactive than some people feel comfortable with. But, once you get a case that's associated with the building, he's basically going to have the discretion to start putting masks on everybody in the hallway anyway. So, I understand where he's coming from. We're trying to take a proactive approach, but again, we're kind of at a little bit of an impasse here as far as what we're trying to do. So, maybe you just stick with what your motion is here, and we just move forward. Because again, we could sit here and argue. I could sit here and argue all night saying I would like the discretion to be able to be flexible to do all that stuff. We've been down that road already. This is kind of somewhat of a compromise, I think, based on what we were originally, and again, I might not be 100% happy with it, but you're the ones that are making the motion here. So whatever motion you decide to make, whatever action you decide to take, we respect you enough to do what you're asking us to do. So, honestly, for the sake of trying to get home and, and not that that's a reason to just throw in the towel, but I'm saying, I think we just go with what the motion is on the table and say, you know what, this is what we're gonna do, this is what the plan says, this is how we're gonna administer. There's gonna be some things that aren't gonna be perfect about what we're gonna do, there's gonna be some things, that people aren't gonna be happy. At the end of the day, the teachers still reserve the right to protect themselves in the classroom. When we get a case in the building, we're gonna adjust. And at that point in time, we're gonna start doing more to try to mitigate what's happening. So, if everybody's okay with that, I think, I don't have any issue with the resolution or the motion, or whatever we have now.
Okay, so do we have a motion to?
Do you want me to read it?
I was just gonna.
Okay, or was that okay?
Kevin was kind of.
You want me to read it?
Yeah, well, yeah, you said it way better
So
now.
I'm just gonna say, the board approves the resolution, and basically all we're doing is we're kind of reaffirming what's already there, but The Freeman School District Board of Education believes the use of face coverings is an effective measure in mitigation of COVID-19. As such, the board supports the use of face coverings in the school building. The administration is directed to administer the use of face coverings as outlined in the Freeman School District reopening plan.
Do we want to do a roll call vote?
I suppose for the sake of everything, you probably should.
All right. Slade?
So I'm gonna have to ask you to repeat it again, I can't hear you very well, Kevin.
Okay, so essentially, there's kind of some window dressing, but basically the gist of it is the administration is directed to administer the use of face coverings as outlined in the Freeman School District reopening plan.
So basically, in a nutshell, you would have to wait until an active case before you can make any minor adjustments, and you lose all flexibility in the meantime?
Yes.
Okay.
Do
So let's
you,
vote.
we are. You're first. We're doing a roll call.
No.
Okay. Mark?
Yes.
Kyle will be a yes. Corey?
No.
Cody?
Yes.
So motion carries 3-2. Spectator restrictions.
Cody, when he called me the other day, asked if it was okay to put that back on there, because I think there was some, you can probably explain it better than me, just wanted to readdress it.
Yeah, I mean, so at the game last Tuesday, there was however many people here. Obviously, people felt safe because there was only a handful of people that had face masks on. Yes, I'm thinking that I feel that we should open it up to the spectators. If they don't feel comfortable, guess what? They're probably not going to come anyway. Why do we have a limit on who can come? Mark, when you called schools today, did you ask any of that?
Chester, I think us and maybe a couple others around the area, the only ones that have actually restricted it. Marion, maybe Academy. But Chester, Parker, Vibrant, Hurley, Canastota, Menno, Hanson, Bridgewater, Emory, Irene, Wakanda, anyone can come. So, I had to stop somewhere.
Now, you weren't here for any of that, so, but it's,
I brought this up the other night, and again, you can do whatever you want to do with this. When we had our conference meeting, there was one school that basically just said, we're gonna let everybody in, we're sending something out that says you enter at your own risk. My opinion on that is, I think it's a little bit irresponsible to just say, we as a school don't care, come to the building at your own risk, people make their own choices. And I understand there's a part of the population that thinks it's up to everybody to make the individual choice, so on and so forth. The thing that concerns me about doing that is kind of what Cody had said, and I talked about this the last meeting too. Whoever you decide to let in the building, you need to be prepared for them to basically do whatever they want to do, and they're not going to follow any guidelines, they're not going to follow any of that stuff. Which again, is their choice to do that if you're leaving it as a recommendation. I just look at some of the elderly people that showed up to the game the other night, some of them would probably fall into that more vulnerable category. And we can still make, the assertion that it's their choice to come whether they want to or not, they understand the risks. Again, that doesn't sit well with me, but again, that's just my opinion. The problem that I see with that is those people were here at the game the other night, and those people were actually wearing masks, but
there was a few.
if everybody else isn't wearing the mask, then we're not really protecting those people either. So that's my concern, is you're gonna have some of those people that, regardless of the scenario and the situation floating around, are going to come to the game regardless, because, let's be honest, everybody's been cooped up for so long that they wanna find opportunities to get up and do that. I just don't wanna create an environment for those people that is not safe. And I feel like that's kind of what we have going on when we do You know, and again, we addressed the whole issue last time of, well, we can just require everybody to wear masks. To be honest with you, I don't wanna stand at the door
Right.
and try to administer that particular, because that's just gonna be, it's not gonna be good for anybody, it's gonna be ugly.
Have you heard from, did anybody call, like, issues with, like, obviously, and I've been calling, hey Kevin, we had a family fight. Did you have anybody, many people call and say, hey, like, this is causing issues
No, I didn't,
at home?
I mean, I didn't have anybody contact me about that, but that certainly doesn't mean that that wasn't the case.
I agree, I'm kind of in favor of the whole thing being open, but at the same time, like, I just like, for instance, like, your family, and I think his family, like, or maybe since we're allowing, and I don't wanna make special arrangements for them, but like, they get 4 tickets, and it's hard, like, if Mark's parents wanna come, like, well, then Luke doesn't get to come, or Mark stays home, or, you know, like, and I don't mean to pick your family out.
No,
but
that's
I know
exactly
you-
what happened.
I know that's exactly how it happened to your family, and so like, I know Mark suggested 6 tickets, and I know that doesn't eliminate everybody's family, and I know the coaches have been more than willing to share, I heard they're sharing tickets, which I think is awesome. I feel like putting some families in tough situations, and maybe that's just tough, I don't know. And maybe we don't need to do anything right now, but like, think about maybe 6 tickets, maybe not everybody coming in, but to try and alleviate some families.
Honestly, I think if you're gonna go more than 4 tickets, you might as well just open it up to everybody. Because, I mean, to be honest with you, the whole ticket thing, in theory, is to try to cut down the people, and particularly from Shane's perspective over here, if I'm him and what I'm doing down at the elementary, not that it's a whole lot better up here, but I don't want K-5 kids or 6th grade kids in there, because we're just creating another situation where
Well,
they're gonna do that. Now, you know, we've kind of given some of them the opportunity to do that by saying, if you have a ticket, you can get in. I will tell you, the ticket thing creates a whole lot of extra work for our athletic director. But again, my concern is if you just open it up to everybody, you know, if we start having K through 8 kids running around and they're all over the place, we're opening up we're creating another situation where it makes it look like what we're trying to do during the school day is kind of.
right, I understand that, and actually, and so like, I agree, and now I fought the concession stand, and I heard that was kind of a nightmare with people back, but like you say, people are gonna do whatever they want once they're in here. I just feel bad for situations where, hey, grandma can come, or one aunt can come, not your husband, and I know there's no perfect, I feel tough when I feel bad that there's family situations that are.
So, in 4-H this year, grandparents were not allowed to be there,
Right.
just immediate family. So, if my 2 children were showing, I could be there, of course, my wife works there.
Right.
So I could be there, but my oldest son couldn't be there.
He wasn't allowed.
Because he's not within the household. Unless he lived in my household, he would have been allowed. So
Guess what?
my wife's parents and my parents weren't allowed to come to a show that was outside.
And I'm not arguing that, I'm saying.
So I'm just saying, I'm comparing apples to apples here. So now we've had families that said, well, you know, and 4-H is voluntary just as well as playing sports is voluntary. So that's how the state handled it, was you can't have those people there at these county shows.
Right. You're comparing apples to apples, kind of, except for if I say, Corey, here's 1 extra ticket, now pick the family member that come. And so.
But they would eliminate.
No, I know, and I actually wish the state of South Dakota athletic department would just say, this is what it is.
And even
then
playing for field across the board.
whether that's, and I think even in our plan, I think once we go to yellow, I think it's just parents anyway, right? I mean, if I remember that right, so maybe it's not worth, I don't know. Again, I don't wanna sit here all night. So maybe it's worth, we're gonna obviously get a revisit come basketball season, right? So maybe it's worth, unfortunately, volleyball is how it is, and we to go. But
And you don't have a huge crowd in volleyball the way it is. I mean, it's just part of the game. But I did have an elderly grandma who said, because they have a larger family, she says, I can't get a ticket. And she says, everybody is so worried about me, but I'm missing life. And I'm willing to be careful, wear my mask, sit in the corner, social distance, so I can experience life with my grandkid. And so I kind of get it. I'm not a grandparent, but I understood after I talked with her. Some of these people are just saying, yeah, maybe you could keep me from COVID or whatever, but that's really my choice, and I don't want to miss out on all those things. So I'm kind of of opinion to open it up. We just don't have that many people that show up anyway. Then you forget a lot of hassle, but again, I'm 1 to 5 here.
These are televised, right?
They had problems this last one.
yeah, can we do it, like, that NFHS one was kind of a nightmare to try and find, I think.
I got them right away.
We had to have a Roku, you couldn't just go, I couldn't even just get it off my phone, like, we couldn't even just do it off the phone.
Apple AirPlay, we had to, you couldn't cast it. There's no
Is
cast.
it, can we do a YouTube?
I was watching a computer in my office.
Right,
at work.
but like if you want to put on your TV, you have to.
Can we do a YouTube or something? That would be a little more,
Would you have to have someone though with a camera versus that?
You do the
machine, though?
YouTube version, I mean, it's similar to this, where he runs this through YouTube, which you can do, but the problem is you actually have to have somebody there
physically
running the camera, doing all that stuff. That's why the thing on the wall works better, because it's kind of set up with an algorithm that, the camera moves on its own based on where the ball is.
You can't cast it, you have to either Apple AirPlay or other ways, plug your computer into the TV.
Right.
I get what you're saying there.
That was our experience, and I don't know if anybody else had it. I know Cody called and said you were having troubles here.
Yeah, the TV's here.
And so I didn't know if there was a way we could look
So that's
into.
why I thought maybe.
Oh, you mean these up here are different than what is broadcast on
Okay.
the computer.
When
So-
I came out to the concession, I saw, well, crap.
Sure.
If
Somebody-
they've lost it, now what we're trying to provide for everybody that
Yeah.
can't show up, have lost
Somebody
it too.
called
right?
my parents after they left and said, what happened after the first game? It cut out. And so it must have been something that went wrong.
And I don't, if that's maybe an avenue if we can look, and if we have to have somebody here, that's, I know I heard on the radio, that's what like the Sioux Falls schools are doing. And I thought, well, YouTube is way easier for people to, but if it's what it is, that's what it is too, I guess, I mean. Because to bring somebody in to do that, I guess, is probably not all that awesome.
Well, I mean, I suppose, I don't want to speak for Seth, because then it'll be mad at me.
Yeah.
But, I mean, so what he does during the game that gets projected up here is there's a stationary camera he sets up in the corner. It's not as good of a view as what you get out of that. I mean, I suppose
How about if we did both?
realistically, he could probably put a stationary camera up there. I don't necessarily know how comfortable he feels leaving that stuff unattended without a person there.
Well, it's all on camera, nobody's.
Because
Yeah.
that's, right, because that's not cheap stuff there.
No,
can
but
talk.
maybe if we could make it another option, or if that would be something
I'll talk to him and see if it's feasible to do that, yeah.
simpler to
Did we
find.
pay a subscription to this NFHS?
No, it's all free.
So we as a school paid, so what we've done in the past is, you individually can purchase a year-long subscription, do all that stuff. We said, based on what we're gonna do and what could potentially happen this year, we as a school will just pay the fee. I think I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, but you can pay a yearly fee and just all your people get it for free.
Okay.
So that's what we did. So that way anybody can just go on there. You still have to create an account, but it's a free account, and then
It said like a free trial or something, and then it was like, said something about, I wasn't there when my wife did it, but I think she said it said something about free trial, but then it was like $70.
so you shouldn't have to pay anything after that.
And I don't think she did, but she clicked the free trial, and so it was just a little bit,
Sure.
and so if we can make it simpler, that would maybe make me feel a little better for people, cause whatever. Well, I'll use Cody, my parents I'm pretty computer illiterate, and they're even worse, and so like, if Cody's in K here at the game already, it's harder but anyway. is everybody okay with 4 and just revisiting it for basketball, or are you rather?
I'd like to open it up, but I don't know if anybody else feels the same. Cody?
I guess I'd like to open it up, whatever you guys want.
Is there anybody else who wants to? If not, we won't bother with the motion.
Slade, you're there? What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts, Slade?
Yeah, I think we can wait on this till the next one.
Okay.
I didn't hear him.
He's got
What he's saying is wait till
Till the next,
winter to.
you mean the next meeting or the winter?
Meeting,
Okay,
Next meeting?
correct.
okay.
All right, I guess I'm fine with that.
I'm fine, have all what?
Okay.
And I think we should try and, if it's possible, talk to Seth and see if we can get it on YouTube, and maybe that'll make it a little easier.
Maybe that NFHS will work itself out.
I know there's an issue with the NFHS, because of the system they run through, you can't take that camera view and put it on YouTube,
Okay.
because I think there might be some copyright issues,
Yeah.
whatever that is, but yeah, I'll talk to him and see if we can come up with something there.
Okay. And then I think the only thing we have left to do is we need a motion to adjourn the special board of education meeting.
So moved.
Motion by Corey,
Second.
second by Cody. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Where you at, Slade?
Taking a nap.
Here,
I think you've eaten it.
I'm on my phone, just for board meeting, just let you guys.
Okay. All right, see you, Slade. Well, I appreciate you guys that, none of this is fun, but that we can kind of work at it together and
Oh, unfortunately, I'm afraid in a couple weeks it's not gonna matter.
You think it's gonna get that much worse?
I think we're starting to see, like, so today, and obviously, if you look at the numbers, yeah, you know, if you look at the numbers today, you know, common sense would tell you that there's nowhere for them to go other than up, right? Just you start getting everybody into,
Well, and and somebody else brought it up there, like, you have all the schools now doing testing, so like, if you're gonna catch a fever that a kid might not